So Manuel is gonna go next.
Yeah, now get ready for the actual cringe, corny time in my essay. So yeah, I also answered the same prompt. So yeah, I'll just get right into it. Also, for context, I talk about my hair in it, and my hair used to be like very big when I was younger, and so that's why it doesn't make sense now because like I barely have any. But yeah, so just gonna go right into it. In elementary school, I felt like an outsider. I'm Mexican, and I was often made fun of for my appearance and the way that I talked. Most of my classmates had limited exposure to people of color, so they oftentimes didn't even understand that what they were saying was hurtful. For instance, after being repeatedly called Dora the Explorer because of my thick, dark hair, I spent hours ironing it out and searching for products that conformed to the standards of beauty that my classmates were used to. I hated the way I looked and wanted to look like everyone else. It wasn't until middle school that I began to understand why those differences kids made fun of are such a huge part of who I am. In October of 2010, I attended the first Chavez family reunion in La Paz, California, at the headquarters of the United Farm Workers Union. Hearing speeches and stories about the history of my family, I was overwhelmed and incredibly inspired by the magnitude of my Mexican American family's heritage. Growing up in a migrant farm working family, my dad and his cousins endured many harsh trials involved in farm labor, such as lack of clean water and decent bathrooms, low wages for hours of grueling work, and cramped living conditions. His parents were illiterate, and no one in his family had even graduated high school. Such life circumstances fueled my father's desire to pursue more for his own life, despite strong resistance to attending college. Over time, I began to embrace and even love my differences because they underscore my culture, my family, ultimately my identity. My dad's unrelenting commitment has influenced my own work ethic. The interaction with my family made me realize that my characteristics are not to be suppressed, but rather things that strengthen me. My family's dedication to making a difference in the world inspires me to follow in their footsteps. My upbringing has given me a broader perspective and various experiences that have molded me into a more conscious and sensitive person to those that are marginalized or deemed outsiders, not only in my school, but in my community as well. Since middle school, I have volunteered at the Boys and Girls Club Black Bologna branch, where I mentor kids in the Hispanic community of Eden Gardens in Solana Beach, California. I lead them in fun activities and field trips during the summer and tutor them during the school year. I listen to them when they need to vent and offer advice on issues that I have also experienced, such as being underestimated or stereotyped due to appearance or culture. Perhaps like me, many of them don't yet understand how valuable they are and what they are capable of. My goal as a peer mentor is to help them realize their true potential, encouraging them to dream big. I plan to help further tear down stereotypes, not only by breaking them and helping others to recognize that stereotypes do not define them, but also by providing healthcare. I want to become a doctor and also do work in healthcare administration in order to help disadvantaged communities to a greater extent by creating more access to healthcare and health education. I am grateful for I am grateful because my experiences have shaped my self-awareness and purpose of helping outsiders. Without outsiders like me, the world would see no change. So yeah, that was the corny bit. But I would say like the basic structure of my essay, I guess I was just really talking about my identity and like the transformation of my own understanding of my identity, and then tied that into kind of like some goals that I had for the future, which not really still pursuing the healthcare track, but I mean I think like the core of it was still as I would say is still true. So for like advice in writing it, I would just say like don't underestimate like your own experiences and just try to just be honest in like the way that you're presenting it and what you're actually interested in. So yeah.
Awesome. Oops. So, in all honesty, mine is not as good as the rest of these, but I'm still going to read it. So, mine was this discussing an accomplishment, event realization that sparks a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself and others. So, yeah, my body felt like it was going to erupt like a volcano. Despite my brain begging my limbs to remain still, my hands shook and my feet tapped uncontrollably. My heart was beating so loudly that I was convinced it was trying to seek everyone's attention in the classroom. My throat constricted like someone's hand was wrapped around it. My skin was drenched with sweat as cold chills made it tingle. As my turn inched closer, the fear completely engulfed my body, dripping through my veins. My teacher's voice reached me through the distance. Dominique, it's your turn to read to the class. If one were to walk into a classroom, the student who sat as quiet as a mouse, never seeking attention, was the definition of the younger me. For this reason, reading out loud in class terrified me. Not only was I petrified of attention when it was placed on me, causing a physical response that paralyzed me, but I was also ashamed by my speech impediment, causing me to mispronounce words. This paralyzing fear caused me to freeze in both classroom settings, but also when I was around anyone I wasn't familiar with. During primary school, I was completely satisfied with being overlooked, even though sometimes that meant having a dull school experience with very few friendships. I vividly remember never speaking in class and then talking my mom's ear off each day after kindergarten. In fact, one day, after witnessing me releasing all the thoughts I had held up during the day, I was overheard by another student who whispered to her mother in shock, "I didn't know she could speak." Years later, when I started to realize that I was missing out on life, I asked myself, why was I living life in fear and silence, and made a mental decision to make some modifications. My whole mindset began to change. I would stare at myself in the mirror and say, Dominique, you will no longer live in silence. Each day before I entered a classroom, I'd convince myself to make another step towards my ultimate goal. My confidence grew as I realized that embarrassment and occasional failure is the key to personal growth. After a lot of persistence and daily practice, I overcame my speech impediment and I conquered my fear of reading out loud. Now, as a class president, I even have the privilege of reading the announcements every day to my school over the intercom. My words are no longer whispered to a class of 6-year-olds, but raised to a school full of young adults, faculty, and teachers. Furthermore, I no longer experience unbearable shaking during class prior to speaking. On the contrary, when a teacher asks questions, I am usually the first to raise my hand. Most importantly, though, I started a club where shy students can meet one another like myself and get help to break outside of their comfort zone by meeting other students. What personal growth have I accomplished in my 12 years of schooling? I've learned to live out loud. During primary school, nobody knew who the true Dominique was except my family because my bubbly personality was hidden behind a sheet of fear. But now I'm myself 24/7. I have been class president for 2 years of high school, and I have been the captain of my soccer team and volleyball team. I have many friends who have a tendency to migrate towards me, wanting to be in my presence because of the positivity that I try to encourage everyone to possess. I also live to learn through my YouTube channel, which I developed several months ago, and I'm proud to say have accumulated 35,000 views. One of my most popular videos, being a college tour of the University of Pennsylvania, had to throw that in there, accompanied by my sister who attended the school. Because of this video, many people have reached out to me across the globe seeking my help with applications. Surprisingly, because of my channel, I now recognize my love for being in the public. In the future, I want to use my newly found voice to not only entertain people, but also to educate, encourage, and inspire people to live outside their comfort zone. I would love to host my own talk show and also become a philanthropist because I believe it's so important to help others. So everyone has the opportunity to live out loud. It's so funny reading back what you wrote, but that was my essay. So it's very different than everyone else's. But yeah, thank you guys. I think it's really important to notice too that everybody took such different approaches, and there's no one right way to do this, to write an essay.